What's up, guys? Out in the shop again today, working on the Mustang, and today we're going to be installing these beautiful custom-built BC Racing coilovers, and man, I cannot wait. Right, guys, so first thing I want to show you, we have the car up on the lift. You might have noticed it at the end of the last video, but we did bed liner on the fender wells and the chassis, and I'm so stoked on it. This stuff actually came out super good. This is the kit I used. It's by Custom Coat. It was like $95 for a gallon of this stuff with the thinner and hardener. It's like a combo thing. You just fill it up to the line, mix it, put it in your gun and spray it. Now, I have some advice. If you use this, it sprays at 40 to 70 PSI. I sprayed it at 40 with great results. Make sure you mask everything extremely well, because even if you don't, like, there's so much pressure, it will blow through, and that happened in a couple spots. But I was able to clean it up. Let's go over. So I did these. This is what I was most worried about. One, this just looks really good. It's gonna get dirty, obviously, but I'm more worried about how it's gonna look when rocks and stuff hit it, and this stuff should hold up really well. Like I said, this is really easy to use, really impressive. I also did here back on the tunnel. My biggest concern was actually the tunnel, just reducing noise and heat. And the main reason I had to do the outside edges was because of where I welded the base plates in. It obviously burned the paint off, so it looks super good. I mean, I'm literally in love with it. Alright guys, so before we start today, I'm going to give you a quick overview of these BC coils. Now, these are not just any old BC coil. They're actually custom built for my car. There was a Black Friday deal going on, well, by BC Racing, but it was from Chelsea Denofa, the professional drifter, and he was doing a custom built coilover setup for $1,000 shipped. That was for the basic line. I spent literally just a hair more, not too much. These were $12.75, I believe, shipped to my door, and they're supposed to be custom valved. The spring rates are custom, and there's supposed to be some other things that are custom in them, with like the stroke and all that. But regardless, these front ones are the digressive series. I would look that up. I can't explain it to you too much. I do understand how it works, but I can't really explain it to you, as weird as that sounds. But these are the digressive series in the front. The rear are regular progressive series. And Chelsea said that this is actually kind of ideal for drifting, because the digressive doesn't really work with grip when your wheels are spinning like they are in drifting, but it works great for the front, which isn't, having way more wheel speed and spinning. So that's why he hooked me up with this setup. These have the added helper spring and the digressive in the front, and that's why they were $12.75. And the spring rates, for anyone wondering, 10K in the front, 5K in the rear. That's a really soft rear spring, I'm pretty sure. I think the front might actually be slightly stiffer. And I'm going to guess that the 180 and the 200 are the lengths of the springs. And that's probably because these have the helper springs in the front. So, yeah. And that's all the specs they gave me on them. Alright guys, so first thing I'm going to do, personally, is install this sway bar end link. It comes with shorter sway bar end links for the Mustangs, primarily because these actually mount the sway bar to the coilover body and not the chassis, or like the lower control arm, rather, like some other setups do. So you're going to want to install this first because it's behind the coilover, and it'd just be a lot easier to put it on the car now rather than later. So, and if you look closely, usually when they're new, they're pretty tight, but there is an Allen head in there, so that way if it starts to spin, you can use that. And I'll also say, working on new cars is rad. Not that this car is that new, but if this was a 240, this stupid ass bolt probably wouldn't have came off. Probably would have required some torching. But luckily, this Mustang was, obviously a lot better cared for than most 240s, and not 30 years old, so. Alright, next we're going to install these absolutely gorgeous coilovers that I love so much. And it does appear they actually have two different sway bar mounting points. I don't know what that's, I guess the stock one does too, which is kind of neat. But we're going to take the nuts off the top hats here and install this top part first. One really cool thing I want to point out about these Fords is their stock bolts, which apparently I heard these are one-time use. Am I going to replace them? No. They use this little piece here, which actually hits the coilover, so that way you don't need to double wrench these to get them off, which is super nice. But apparently they replaced this one at one point with some type of concentric bolt to like adjust camber, and I don't have one, so I'm gonna have to order another one from Ford. Alright guys, so if you look here, if you notice what happened is, I didn't realize that the bolt wasn't threading on straight, and it went cockeyed, jammed, this thing snapped off, ratchet hit me in the face. That sucks, but I guess I need two now. Anyway, the bottom one I'm not going to tighten up because that one's not important. And one thing to note, I don't know if you guys noticed, or if you've seen these before, the top bolt slot is actually slotted, so you can squeeze a little bit more camber out if you want to. So make sure you tighten that one up really good, because if not, that'll move and mess with your alignment, which isn't good. Alright guys, so something else really cool in here. If you notice this little tab on the back, it comes with its own little Allen head bolt. I believe there's actually a Allen head wrench with the coilovers for these. That on the Mustang is for this little guy, which is just for your brake line, which is actually really nice. That bolts there, and then it bolts to the car. Just thought that was a neat little feature I'd show you. Alright guys, so I didn't show it, but I got this guy mounted up to here. I bolted this bracket back here, which will give you, the slack you need here. This, these two should not be moving. But up here we got this piece mounted up again. I had this off obviously for the undercoating, and that's one completely installed. Actually I have to tighten the top hats up, but pretty much just gonna repeat that on the other side and get that one buttoned up as well. All right, we got the Mustang flipped around here, and we're gonna start on the rear coilovers, which are a little bit different than a standard coilover because the spring is on a separate perch than the actual shock, similar to like a 350Z and the like. So we're gonna bust these wheels off and then get right into it. For anyone wondering, this car has 20s on it right now, and they're definitely not going to be fitting after the rear coilovers are on. Now that the motor's in up front, because I took a little break from this video to do the motor, because I had to move the car around and I couldn't be on the lift, so regardless. The 20s almost rub in the front with the motor in, so they're definitely going to need a height adjustment in the rear. Alright, so now you guys can kind of see what I'm talking about. This is the actual shock itself, bolts right down here, and then this is the spring, which is on the axle on its own little perch. So what I'm gonna do is take off this sway bar first, and we're also gonna drop the panhard bar, which is this guy right here. Now if you look, the panhard bar is missing all this paint because it's bent. It's supposed to be straight. It's very much so not straight. And we're also doing lower control arms, the upper control arm, and a new panhard bar while we're in here. So for now, I'm gonna take this off, drop the sway bar, which the sway bar is also bent, but I don't really have another one of those just yet. We're gonna drop all that, and then we're gonna start pulling the coilover stuff. I just want to take a second to point out to you guys why I love these little bolts with the tabs built in. Once again, I remember on my 240, you always got like a wrench and a ratchet, and you're jamming underneath the car, fighting the subframe. But this way, it's just one wrench and go at it. I fucking love it. The only good thing Ford ever did. All right, guys. So here is the original spring that was in the car. I actually believe these are aftermarket. Maybe not lowering, but at least like increased handling springs. Here is the spring from BC Racing, as well as this is the adjustment collar. So this is very important to the operation. This sits on the spring like that, and this is now how you adjust your ride height. So I'm not really sure where it's gonna sit compressed. I'm just gonna throw it in as it sits now. And I mean, in theory, it should be like a 4-inch difference like those two. But if maybe the spring rates are different and how they compress, so this might need to get jacked up a good bit. But we are gonna throw this guy in now with this little cone on top and the regular perch on the bottom, like this. That guy goes on there, spring, and then spring goes up. Right, guys. So I'm kind of disappointed in BC. They included all the hardware for the front, but the back I had to reuse these old rubber bushings. Luckily they weren't in that bad a shape. If I would have known, I would have ordered some though. And then I also had to put a zip tie on here. There was no zip tie on the boot, so and that's gonna help that. But I got this bolted in, and I also got the shock clearly in there. It's got a little bit of pressure on it now that this is up. I'm honestly thinking this is gonna have to come way down, because if you look here, I'm just thinking a 20 is not gonna fit. So we're gonna throw the other side on, and then we're gonna do the pannered bar and some of these rear arms that have to get replaced because the other one is tacoed. All right, guys, so there is definitely a box missing inside of this box. There's definitely a package missing, and I'm actually pretty upset about it. It's kind of bumming because I was like excited to install these coilovers today and be done with it. I'm gonna have to wait till next week now because BC is fucked up. And I was just dropping this axle on this side to lift that side, and this whole shock came out even though I put the bolt on. Well, it turns out that there must be missing hardware because this bolt was a different size than the factory bolt that I tried to reuse because there was nothing included. All right, guys, so I went out to go get rid of all my aggression to BC, picked up some Wawa, and picked up some fucking bolts. I've seen pictures online of these coilovers with bolts on the end, and I've seen ones without bolts on the end. So I honestly have no idea how they're supposed to come, how they're supposed to ship. Regardless, I think it's a little bit ridiculous. They're $1,200, and this was 99 cents for 2 nuts. So I think if you're watching this, BC, you know, I'm calling you out, bro. You should fucking include 99-cent nuts with these almost $1,300 coilovers, and yeah, I'd be a lot happier then. Thanks. So thanks to our new nuts, we got both sides fully installed. The perches are in with the springs, and I'm just gonna say this now, this car is definitely gonna need to be raised. This is max low, and that's the bump stop, which should be more forward, I believe. I don't know, I doubt it hits. Yeah, it's supposed to hit right there. So it's like 1.5 inches. Like when I drop this, there seems like next to no clearance for the bump stop. But the panner bar is already out, that taco piece of shit. We're gonna pull the sway bar next because it's also bent as well as broken. Move this ladder. The sway bar link on this side broke off completely. This is the side that actually hit the curb. So he actually bent the axle when he hit the curb and had to do a new axle and a new seal on the axle tube, which is also why there's no brake rotor over here. So we need to get pads and rotors for the back. All right, guys, so these are actually the arms that we're gonna be installing, as well as this pannered bar. Now, the reason they're all nice and shiny is these are actually aluminum, and this bar is extremely light, probably about 8 pounds, which is pretty good for a bar that's probably about 3.5 feet or so. And these are by J&M right here products. I bought them everything on American Muscle. It was $420 for everything here. This is the American Muscle House brand adjustable upper, 2 J&M adjustable lowers. These also come like red and black powder coated, but I mean these things look sick. They're all aluminum. And then the pannered bar. The pannered bar, I mean I was kind of worried about this, like in terms of strength, because drifting is all about lateral loads. And if you're gonna crash into something with a wheel, it's gonna be a lateral load, and that's gonna be taking the brunt of it. But it was pretty fairly priced, on par with everything else. I figured aluminum would be a little bit lighter, and the worst case where I do crash into something, maybe that'll bend instead of everything else, but still be strong enough all the other times. So this is kind of like my weak link in the system, but I honestly don't think it's that weak at all. It'll be plenty strong enough. So we're gonna get to installing these right now. All right, guys, so I just went to install the pannered bar, and pretty much common problem. This right here is not long enough. So all you gotta do is loosen up the 2 points and spin this to extend it, and extend it out all the way until this hole lines up. And then basically, once you have this bolted in, you can suck it back whichever direction you need to center it up where you want. But for now, just extend it out. Alright guys, so next up we're going to start work on the control arm. This is the control arm that was really jacked up, and this is after I went and took the press to it to kind of fix it up some, because in the accident this got pushed forward. This here was, I don't know if this was the axle hitting or what. I mean, it had to be part of the axle because nothing's going to dent the body like that. Actually, it might have been the control arm, but regardless, this was basically folded up. This wheel was way far forward, especially compared to where it is now. So I pressed it back as best I could, but now that we're in here, it's time to fix this for good, and we're gonna unbolt this and get the new one in, the nice new adjustable one as well, because the way this suspension works, it's a solid axle, and the panhard bar basically centers it. Now, if you lower it, you need an adjustable one, because the panhard bar, as you lower it, is gonna flatten out. And when it flattens out, it's gonna push the end point over, which is gonna shift the axle. So your axle is never gonna be centered without an adjustable one. The lower control arms, same principle applies, usually a lot less of an effect, at least in my personal experience. As you lower it, the end link is gonna go from this to this. It's gonna push the axle further back, or if it was already close to flat, it might actually go, you know, the opposite direction and pull the axle forward. So that's why you should get adjustable stuff, and it's actually super affordable. And they even make this stuff with rubber bushings if you're just a street car and want a little bit more stiffer rear end but still good ride quality, because these solid bushings will make this car probably a good bit louder inside, and it's going to be a little bit more responsive. You're going to feel more of the road. So if we look at the end on these lower control arms, they have an offset joint, so both of them are like that. Well, never mind, actually, sorry. One end is like that. Learn something new every second. But if we look here, that one looks to be pretty centered. That one is way offset. So the longer end here is gonna go on the outside edge of the axle side. That way when we install it, it, you know, should be right. All right, guys, so if you notice, when I took the stock one off the other side, this was cut out. This is why when I took it off, this line, it's an e-brake cable, it runs through here, and I don't know, I just don't feel like unhooking it. This is junk to me, so I'm gonna get the cutoff wheel. I can cut this out so we can fit our new ones on here. All right, guys, so these things look freaking dope, man. That one got like a score mark in it. I don't know, maybe did this one too? Maybe that's to mark the front. They both have like this score mark. I didn't notice before. Anyway, they look pretty sweet. These will no longer pass through, obviously. You can zip tie them here or something if you want. It's gonna rub. They actually have this little sleeve just for that. Coilovers are in. We still have to set ride height. So right now, I'm not even gonna go about properly aligning this rear end. I'm just gonna eyeball it, center it up as best I can by eye, and in the wheel well by eye, because we don't have our wheels and tires yet or our ride height set. So once we have all that set, we can do that. But one more thing we have to do is that upper control arm. If you notice, this actually has an aftermarket upper in it. That's, I'm sure, why all that bolt penetrant is up there, because someone had trouble getting that out. But we're gonna replace that with our new adjustable one, and that'll be the last thing we do, and then move on to the other. Guys, so if you're gonna be doing this on your own car, you actually have to drop this bracket just to get this bolt out, because you can't get it out between these two pieces, which are like the buckets for the back seats. So you have to drop this. Be very careful when you do, because if you can't tell, the pinion just drops right down. I really should have known better than that one. And the reason I warn people is I know that people who are doing this on their own car are most likely going to be laying on the ground doing this, and if you're laying on the ground and this happens, you could get injured pretty easily. So make sure you support it, and that way you don't get smacked with a pinion of a 40. All right, guys, so ignore all this. This was the previous owner's exhaust hold up, but we got it in. This is no bolt in because this bolt comes from the top. So make sure you do that one. If you have a car with full interior, you're obviously gonna have to take your seats out, but that one's right up top. Those two are in. Got it. Nothing is final right now. Nothing's gonna be clocked, but it seems to be at a pretty good angle. You want this angle to match the angle of your motor and trans, which should be around 3 degrees for both. So, oh, look at the pretty powder coat. Anyway, everything else in here seems to be good. I measured. We got the axle. It's not cockeyed, so it shouldn't be crab walking. The only thing I don't know is how it is set up with the panhard bar. I'm gonna have to throw the wheel on the other side, but I can't really tell because there's no brake rotor. which acts as like a spacer. So that wheel is going to be in more than ever. So I do have to order new brakes. I do have a dual caliper bracket coming as well, and that'll be the next thing we do. But for now, all the arms. All right, guys. So here it is on the ground, on its own weight, and it really, I mean, I thought it was going to be like way too low, and it's really not. Kind of disappointing. This fitment is also weak as fuck. But if we look under here, apparently a lot of times if you lower these, they almost ride on the bump stop. So we got about an inch to go. We're taking an inch out of that easy because this car is going to be on 18s. There's going to be a little bit of wheel gap. It's going to function, hopefully. So, yeah. But overall, guys, that's it for this video. Next time, I don't know what we're going to be working on. We got we got some fuel system plumbing stuff to come in, so I can run my return line and all that to my FiTech unit, which is pretty exciting stuff for me. So that's probably gonna be the next episode, but that's it for this time, guys. We have full BC suspension, full adjustable arms, and this car is gonna shred. Just look at that thing, man. Super dusty, but what do you expect? It's been sitting for a while. God damn. All right, well, next time, guys, you can expect to see some sweet footage of some AN line goodness. We're gonna plumb this thing up.